Welcome everybody. This is Math 14S, and we're going to be working on learning how to do histograms here by hand. And one of the first things you want to do is, if you notice, I have this set of data here, and you're going to need this set of data so you can kind of go through and work on this with me as I go through it. But what I would suggest doing is you go through and identify the maximums and the minimums. All right, so in this particular case, and I already knew this going in, 100 is our smallest value that we have in this set of data, and 134 is our largest value. Now, when you look at those two numbers, we want to look at how far apart they are. Now, our ultimate goal is we want to have, our ultimate goal is we want to build classes and try to find as many, group all these numbers into classes that have the same dimensions, same widths. So what I'm going to look at here is this, I'm going to look at, well, if I figure from 100 to 34, that's a distance of 34. And I want to break that into smaller components. So we want to have, for our classes, we should have, let's scratch that, we should have at least 5, but not more than 15 classes. Okay, at the least 5, but not more than 15. Now, one of the things to keep in mind about this is when you go through, and if you are to read the book on how to go about doing histograms, the technique that they use can be pretty complicated, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. So what I like to do is I like to have my students be much more flexible about how they put the histograms together. The ultimate goal behind the histograms is really to determine shape and to see what it really looks like, where most of the data lies. All right, so what I'm going to do is, because I know I'm a distance of 100 to 30 to 134, I figure I can get more than 5 classes by going a width of 5. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this, I'm going to start at 100, and I'm going to go up to sorry, I need to go up to 105. My pen back. 100 to 105. But what I'm going to do is, I notice I put a less than sign there. And then underneath, I'm going to go 105 to 110 to less than 110, 110 to less than 115, 115 to less than 120, 120 to less than 125, 125 to less than 130, and 130 to less than 135. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, so these are our classes. They have a width of 5. The other thing to keep in mind is that 135 is just a larger number than our maximum, and we want to keep it consistent all the way through. These classes must be all the same width. I'm going to write that down off to the side. All classes must be the same width. All right, now I'm going to make another column here. And this is going to be frequency. We're going to divide this up with this, and actually I'm going to put these into lines like this. There we go, and we can have this grid type of a thing. And what you're going to do then is you're going to go through each of these numbers and place them into the class that they belong in. Now, one thing, if you get 105, it goes into the second row. If you got 110, it goes into the third row, and so on. It's everything up to, but not including that number that is on the right. So what I'd like you to do is, let's look, we'll start with the 112. 112 goes here. I'm going to make a tally mark. 100 goes here. I'll make a tally mark. 127 down here. 120 right there. Okay, that's one of those that lands on that boundary. Notice that 120 goes into the lower part. Okay, take the next few minutes to pause the video and go through and fill out the rest of the tallies all the way through for each of these classes. All right, and we're back. So take a look at the tallies. Hopefully that matches up with what you came up with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little column off to the side here, and we'll put this as our number. So our number in each of these cases, this will be useful. So that's 2, this is 8, this is 18, this is 13, 7, 1, and 1. All right, so that's pretty useful in terms of where everything gets categorized. Now, again, the width I chose is somewhat arbitrary, but notice that I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 classes out of it, which satisfies the requirement that I suggested, which is we want to have at least 5, but not more than 15 classes. All right, so now the next part of what we're going to do is we're going to go through and take this information and create a histogram. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to slide this up. That's a lot of the information I need. Actually, I'm going to slide up a little more. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a y-axis and an x-axis. And on the y-axis, this is where our frequency is going to go. And on the x-axis, these are our numbers. Now, since I didn't give you any context with these this particular set of numbers, I'm just going to label it as such. If there was context involved, then we would describe what those numbers represented. For example, they could be temperature. This is how often these particular temperatures actually have happened, and that kind of thing, as a high temperature. All right, so in terms of frequency, what we're going to do is we're going to go up the x-axis, and I'm going to go up by 2 just because we have a value of 18 here. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. We'll go there. Notice here, though, our numbers start at 100, and I would rather start at 100 than start at 0 and try to count all the way up there. So what I'm going to do, though, is because this location right here, our origin is 0, 0, I'm going to put a little jagged line in here. And what that implies is that you're talking about all the numbers from 0 to 100 are now condensed into this little particular area. So it's skipping all of those. And that way your scale remains correct. So here we're going to start with 100. So that's 105, and every mark is going to be one of the marks for the edges of each of our individual classes. Notice in this case, all the distances of each of these numbers are all the same, going all the way across. Okay, so first thing we'll do, and I'm going to change colors a couple times, is I'm going to look at the class from 100 to 105. We have 2 values in there, so I'm going to go make a column that goes up that height. The next one, we have a height of 8. We're going to come up to about 8, come over, come down. The next one, we're going to go up to 18. So that goes up to about there, approximately. And let's go to the next one. Go up to I guess right about there. So on. Go with another color and 7. Probably about there. And then we have 2 of them that are sitting out 1. So they've got to be smaller than the other ones. And that's what our histogram looks like. Now, what I would call this, so a description of this would be that this is symmetric, and bell-shaped. Now, the reason why I want both of those descriptions is symmetry doesn't have to be just this idea that there's a bell-shaped curve. Symmetry has lots of different ways that it can manifest itself. So in this case, symmetric and bell-shaped is your best description. All right, as another suggestion here, when you're going through, hand drawing them is fine, but if you have graph paper, doing this on graph paper really makes a big difference as well. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another column up here on our frequency distribution, which, if I didn't say that already, that's what this is called. This is our frequency distribution. And actually, I'm going to put that in a different spot. So this is a frequency distribution. Now, and when I'm talking about the frequency distribution, I'm talking about the whole thing here. The whole thing is our frequency distribution. All right, so let's go and we're going to add a little bit more to our frequency distribution, and I'm going to make a relative frequency. Now, relative frequency, I'm going to abbreviate frequency, really just means that you've got to look at the total number of what you have, and you're going to create fractions or decimals. So first off, we need the total that's down here at the bottom. So the total from this column, so we have 2, 8, which is 10, 18 is 28, that's 41, that's 48, 49, 50. Okay. Our relative frequency then here is going to be 2 out of 50. And I'm not going to bother to reduce these at the moment. This is 8 out of 50. This is 18 out of 50. 13 out of 50. 7 out of 50. 1 out of 50. And 1 out of 50. All right, so what you have here, these are our relative frequencies. If I was to use the relative frequencies as what goes onto the edge of my frequency or of my histogram, let's have a look and see what that might look like. So I'm going to make it a little smaller though. This time though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up by 2/50ths. So 2/50ths, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 50ths, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20 50ths. And I'm going to go across here like I did before, make my jagged line. So I'm going to label aside, this is relative frequency. And these are our numbers. So we start at 100, 105, 110, 115, 120, 125, 130, 135. And I know this is kind of roughly drawn. On graph paper, it looks much neater. Okay, so now the first fraction is 2/50ths. So that just goes up to that first mark, just like that. The next one, 8/50ths, like so. The next one's 18/50ths. The next one's 13/50ths. The next one is 7/50ths, and two of them at 1/50th. Now, hopefully one of the things you notice here is really the picture itself doesn't look any different. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Sometimes it's nicer to use the relative frequency because there may be a set of data that maybe you have 10,000 pieces of data in there, and it'd be easier to use the fractions to try to graph what your histograms look like. Frequency distribution, with the frequency distribution, like the one here on the left, this is if your data sets are a little bit smaller. It might be just as easy to go through and count everything and sort everything in that way. So it's really kind of dependent on what kind of data and how much data that you actually have. Okay, but notice that they're really the same picture. We just have a different way of dealing with what the y-axis is. All right. Well, that said, I think that's it for our histograms for today. We will come back at the next video. We'll be dealing more with mean, median, mode type stuff. And also, what follows up with this particular video here, there is a calculator part. And I'd like you to go through the calculator video as well, because it'll take actually the same set of data and you'll go through and be able to learn how to put it into your calculator and show the picture on the calculator as well. All right, thank you.